When it comes to big news stories, 2018 was kind of a big year, but the one that still, I think, sticks out in my mind the most is the midterm elections. It just boggles my mind how intense it was and how on election night, for many of the races, it was all wrapped up, we thought. Oh, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And the next day, everything just turned around. That had us talking for weeks.
There were so many big news stories in the Valley, in the state, and nationally this year. But the one that really stands out was the loss of Arizona Senator John McCain in August. The funeral, the services, the remembrance of his life that followed. But in the spring, you had a first statewide teacher walkout in history. Thousands of teachers left the classroom for about a week. The summer, you had massive monsoon storms. This fall, you had major wildfires, tragic wildfires in California. Numerous stories through the year, but again, the one that really stands out was following the death of Arizona Republican Senator John McCain.
Biggest news story of 2018 has got to be the election, the midterm election, and the most expensive election in Arizona history between Martha McSally and Kirsten Sinema, where they spent over $100 million between the two campaigns and the outside money that came in. And then guess what? They both end up going to the Senate.
One of the biggest stories of 2018 for me was no doubt elections. Election year, not just the season, not just a day in November or even the month of November. It was the entire year. It seems like every day we were talking about the latest developments in the negative ads, the latest developments in who was going into the race, who was dropping out, and of course coming out of Election Day in a historic way with the first woman to be elected as the senator for the U.S. Senate for Arizona. And even just a few days ago, learning that a second woman was going to be heading to Washington, D.C. It seems like it hasn't ended. It will not end. And perhaps kicking off 2019, we're going to begin again with another election battle leading up to 2020.
I think if you're going to look at the biggest story of 2018 here in Arizona, obviously McCain passing away was massive. That was a huge thing, and you couple that with what was going on in politics, I think you can wrap it all up together in a bow. It was the passing of a baton to a younger generation. McSally's down there, and of course Sinema won. I think that all of that plays in though, because McCain led the way, and I think that in so many ways is definitely and easily the biggest news story here this year.
Top news story of 2018, that's a really hard one to pick. I would say definitely the passing of Senator John McCain is the top story.
Hey, it's Mac from Mac and Gatos on KTAR News. Biggest local story of 2018 has to be the passing of John McCain. There will, and mark my words, read my lips if you will, there will never be another politician or another man like the late senator from Arizona. Whether you agreed with him, whether you liked his politics or not, whether you accepted him for the man he was, it doesn't matter. You were alive when the sitting senator from Arizona was a man that, quite frankly, we will never see again. If I could sum it up this way, he will be remembered in history as a man with principle, as a man who defied the odds, defied logic, and history will be kinder to him than a lot of Arizonans have been in his passing.
Biggest news story 2018 here locally, in my opinion, it has to be Red for Ed. I mean, who thought some 50,000 teachers and educators and parents were going to storm the streets of Phoenix in late April, May, in that kind of heat, and then call for such change in our education system? And that change had a ripple effect even in the elections, with the amount of people running that were educators, the amount of women, and voter turnout. I think it was just one of the big stories of 2018 that we're probably going to be feeling for a few years to come.
I think the biggest news story of the year for me that really hit me was the death of Senator John McCain. I think that was the biggest thing locally and the biggest thing that impacted me. However, you can't avoid the Red for Ed movement, the education movement earlier this year, I think kind of lasted the longest locally, and that impacted us for it was like almost a month. It felt like something new was happening every single day. So I think those are certainly the two biggest stories. I'd say Red Fred lasted the longest, but the McCain situation definitely hit the hardest.
Biggest news story of 2018, Senator McCain's passing, which then had the after effect of who was Governor Ducey going to appoint. Well, he appointed Senator Kyle to serve in the Senate. And now we're going to have Senator-elect Martha McSally as well. So 2 females in the Senate in 2019. But in a way, it's kind of been a domino effect, one after the other after the other. Biggest news story on the local front of 2018.
I'm Bob McClay. Here's our top story.